As my fellow music geeks know, album remasters can be hit or miss enough that when they're announced, we usually respond with both excitement at the possibilities, but also some apprehension because remasters are about as likely to sound worse as they are to sound better than previous versions in my experience. With that in mind, when Philippe Despolon and Mike Diaz at Ultimate Ears called me to tell me they were going to be working with Capitol Studios again, but this time to update, to redo the in-ear monitor they'd created together more than 5 years before. I'm talking about the Ultimate Ears Reference Monitor, now known to many enthusiasts as the UERM. Anyway, when I heard this news, I was, not surprisingly, both excited at the possibilities, but again also a bit apprehensive. I mean, they were going to be remastering the in-ear monitor that had become one of my primary neutral references for the last several years. So on this episode of Head-Fi TV, we'll be talking about the new Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered studio mastering in-ear monitors developed with and voiced by the recording engineers at the legendary Capitol Studios in their second collaborative product with Ultimate Ears. Again, the Ultimate Ears Reference Monitor was launched over 5 years ago and was the first collaboration between Ultimate Ears and the engineers at Capitol Studios, and it quickly became my headphone neutral reference. Here at Head-Fi, I listen to so many different headphone systems, so many of these configurations imparting various colorations and flavors, that it's nice to realign with a neutral reference from time to time. As I've said on the Head-Fi forums before, a good neutral reference can serve as a sort of sonic palette cleanser for me. I certainly wasn't alone. In the years since its release, the UERM has become a favorite with many in the professional audio world, and also, of course, in audiophile circles, and perhaps its single most endearing trait was the UERM's perceived neutrality. Now, I say perceived neutrality because the definition of what's truly neutral in the headphone world is still a bit of a moving target, which is an interesting discussion that perhaps we can have in greater detail on the forums or in another episode of Head-Fi TV. The original Ultimate Ears Reference Monitor was tuned to be flat, and like I just said though, in the world of headphones, the concept of neutrality is still a bit up in the air. When it comes to neutral with headphones, are we talking about something that measures flat on an ear simulator, or are we talking about a headphone that's tuned more to simulate flat frequency loudspeakers in a more typical room setting? You see, most rooms add some general boost to the bass due to the increasingly omnidirectional nature of sound as you move lower in frequency. Again, headphones, neutrality, moving target. I bring all this up because the original UERM sounds to me like something that would perhaps measure flatter at the eardrum. And the new Reference Remastered sounds more to me in comparison like it takes the sound of room reinforcement, also called room gain, into consideration, which is actually where my personal definition of neutrality with headphones has also been moving. This has been a topic discussed at length by Paul Barton of PSB, Sean Olive of Harman, and others in various studies, and even with many in our community. To be clear though, the Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered is most certainly not a bass-heavy headphone, but it is to my ears fuller in the lower registers than the UERM is, in a way that I find more realistic, more natural, and yes, for me, more neutral. Now, this isn't the only area the new Reference Remastered improves on the UERM. When doing direct comparisons, it's rather obvious to me that the new remastered monitor has a smoother treble response, not in terms of roll-off, but in terms of a comparative smoothing of peaks. And this smoother, more linear response might at first blush give the impression that the treble is not as extended as UERM, but actually in terms of treble extension, the Reference Remastered in careful listening comparisons actually sounds more treble extended to me than the UERM, yet more organic with the relative smoothing of peaks. In conversations with Vincent Liu of Ultimate Ears, it's clear they worked hard to make this happen, having developed a unique new housing and chamber arrangement for the drivers and their respective bores that comprise something they're calling True Tone drivers, which Ultimate Ears claims is flat to 18 kHz. Their goal with True Tone and the improved treble performance was to better reproduce the harmonic structures and overtones that they claim many other headphones miss. In terms of imaging, the Reference Remastered betters the performance and precision of what was already a strong imager with the UERM. While I'm not hearing the imaging is any wider, it's more coherent in its shape and image solidity. So you may be wondering why they sound as different as they do if the same engineers who voiced the UERM more than 5 years ago also worked on the Reference Remastered. From conversations with Capitol and Ultimate Ears, the improvements were in large part motivated by Universal Music Group's commitment to high-res music, particularly over the last several years. The number of high-res remasters coming from Universal Music Group has been fantastic. And for those of you who didn't know, Universal Music Group oversees Capitol Studios. Conversations with Barrick Moffett, head of Global Strategic Operations at Universal Music Group, only confirmed how serious they are about capturing the artist's performance with, as he said, absolute faithfulness to their creative intent, and that means capturing their sound to the highest fidelity possible. In covering UE's Reference Monitor and now the Reference Remastered, I've had the good fortune to hang out a bit at Capitol Studios, and they put on some amazing demos and direct comparisons to show what's possible with high-res remasters done right. Fantastic stuff. And that brings me to another thing that may account for some of the upgraded sound with the remastered monitor versus the UE-RM. In the years since the UE-RM was released, Capitol Studios has been going through an ongoing studio refurbishment program, and part of that has involved some major upgrades to their monitors. Since the UE-RM was developed, both Studio A and Studio B at Capitol Studios have had their monitors upgraded to PMC's staggering new QB1A active monitors. I've now had a chance to hear the QB1As at Capitol, and they're mind-bogglingly good. Their massive 4,800 plus watts of amplification per channel provide unrestrained dynamics with just as impressive micro detail and a delicate touch. I believe the Capitol engineers were among the group of professionals who helped PMC as they designed the new PMC monitors. And the results, yeah, just amazing. The installation of the big PMCs is part of Capitol's commitment to high-res music. In short, if the engineers at Capitol have upgraded their own reference sound at Capitol Studios, then they've realigned their own reference sound to new standards in the years since the UE-RM's release. What a great time then to ask them to voice a new generation of in-ear studio mastering monitors. While it's not quite like having PMC QB1As shoved into my ears, I can better understand now how they got here. And in doing so, they've given me a new neutral reference, one that's more resolving and more musical than the first generation reference monitor it replaces. The new Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered represents everything you'd hope for from a remastering. Thanks for watching this episode of HeadFi TV. I'll see you on the forums at headfi.org and on the next episode of HeadFi TV.